How's it going, everybody? Sense by Sean here. Thanks for tuning into today's video, and I'm glad to have you back here on my channel. If this is your first time here, thanks so much for stopping by the channel and checking me out. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, like this video, because you do not want to miss out on any of the content that I have coming up. If you're returning to the channel, thanks for stopping on back by. I appreciate having you here as well. We're going to keep this intro nice and short and sweet. Today, we're actually not talking about any fragrances in particular. Today, we are going to be discussing 5 different tips that I've come up with that I think are going to help any level of person who is in the fragrance game, who's in the fragrance community. These are 5 tips that I hope you really haven't heard before. We're not going to be talking about don't spray too much, don't spray too little, don't do the whole wrist rub together thing. None of that nonsense. You've heard it before. It's irrelevant. We're going to be talking about tips that are going to enhance your love of the fragrance game and are hopefully going to make you have a more fun experience. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump into tip number 1. So my first tip for you guys kind of involves anybody in the fragrance game, no matter in what capacity you've enjoyed fragrances, whether it's been an enthusiast or just somebody who wears them to smell nice. And that tip is to revisit old fragrances that you used to love or that you used to dislike. Not only as our tastes change as we grow older and experience new things in life, but also if you are in the fragrance community kind of as a connoisseur and kind of as an enthusiast, you're going to smell tons and tons of fragrances that are going to change your perception on certain notes and on certain nuances of different scents. So it's worth revisiting bottles that maybe back in the day in high school or in college you used to wear all the time, or one that maybe you only smelled 6 months ago and you thought, no way, that's just not for me. I have lots of great experiences with this. There are several fragrances that I've smelled that I really disliked and thought it was too pungent, it was too strong, or maybe it had a note in there that just didn't jive with me. Only for months later to go back and revisit that fragrance, and I was like, what was I thinking? This is fantastic. I really enjoy this now. And also, it definitely goes the other way. There's been some that I've worn as a high school student and as a really young guy that I've revisited now that I've smelled more fragrances, and now that I'm older, that I also didn't know what I was thinking because this is synthetic, this is basic, this is awful. Why did I ever wear this? So in simple terms, don't ever make any absolutes about any fragrance that you smell. If you really dislike one, there's a good chance that later on you might still dislike it. But even if there's that little 1% chance that it might change over time in the way you perceive it and you really enjoy it later on, I think it's going to be worth a revisit. So whether it was a fragrance you loved or you hated, do not be afraid to go back and head into your local department store and pick up those bottles that you thought you once disliked or that you thought you once loved and see if your opinion's changed. So for our second tip, and guys, this one is important. Make sure whenever you are trying out a new fragrance, if you are using a decant that you purchased online, you're heading into a department store to actually smell the fragrance in person before you even purchase a small bottle of it. Make sure that you wear that fragrance on your skin before you make a final decision. Tester strips are great, and they do a great job to give you that top note and to let you know what a fragrance is really capable of, but it's never going to develop on the card like it will on your skin. There's been fragrances that I thought about picking up because on the tester card they were fantastic. I gave a quick spritz on the back of my hand, which is my favorite place to test fragrances. Your opinion may be different, but 2 to 3 hours later, either the scent had dissipated so much that I was so glad I gave it a wear and realized it didn't work well with my skin chemistry, or maybe it just developed into something a little bit odd and a little bit different than the top note first gave off, and I realized that this wasn't the fragrance that I thought it was. On the flip side to that, I've had lots of fragrances that I've applied to my skin that have stayed powerful and have dried down to a very pleasant smell. And I wasn't sure about the opening, but since I was able to wear it for the day and get a nice experience of the dry down, I knew that it was the right purchase for me. So my advice to you guys would be to go ahead and spray that tester strip so you can get that first opening and know if this fragrance is even something you're remotely interested in. But afterwards, if you enjoy it and you are contemplating purchasing it, don't just tuck that card in your pocket or carry it around the store for a couple hours and smell it. Go ahead and get a couple sprays on the neck, get a couple sprays on the back of your hand. I encourage somewhere on your hand or wrists so that way you can smell it throughout the day, because it's very difficult to smell it on your neck or on the back of your ear. Get it somewhere where you can continually get whiffs of it, and with it on your skin, you'll be surprised how that fragrance changes, and you might have a different opinion from when you first smelled the opening. And that tip is, do not blind buy fragrances based on hype. Now, what I mean by that is if you are at all a part of the fragrance community, whether it be in forums, Facebook groups, or you watch a lot of YouTube videos to get some insight on what fragrances you should try, you will have noticed that certain fragrances build a hype and have a large following that can really influence the way you decide if you're going to purchase it or not. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. Having a fragrance hyped up is typically going to mean that that fragrance is good, but it does not mean that that is a fragrance that you will like. It can be so tempting. Guys, I've been there. This fragrance that is on top 10 lists throughout the YouTube community. It's one that if you post in your local Facebook group and say, hey, should I pick this up? You get flooded with absolutelys. It's great. It performs. It smells fantastic. You'll get compliments. I've been there, and it can be really hard to resist clicking that button on your local discounter's website to go ahead and ship it to your house when you've never even had your nose on it. But as tempting as that is, guys, I highly recommend that you hold back that urge and spend the $3 to $8 to $10-ish and try to find yourself a small decant of that fragrance and make sure it is something that you're going to want a full bottle of. Fragrances are expensive. There's no getting around that. And a $3 to $15 investment on a small decant can save you a lot of money. And you can make sure that even though other people like it, this is also something that you feel good about spending your money on. Hype is a wonderful thing, and it can give you really good insight on what fragrances are going to be worth buying. But hype does not mean a good fragrance, and hype does not mean a good fragrance that works well with you. So get decants, do your best to get your nose on something first before you trust the opinions of others for a fragrance, whether or not you're going to like it. For my fourth tip and piece of advice on this list, it is going to be to not try to force yourself to buy or enjoy something just because it's popular. This differs a little bit from the last tip because I'm not telling you not to buy something based on hype or popularity, but sometimes maybe you did go ahead and follow my last piece of advice and you got yourself a decant of something that everybody loves, and on that first sniff, maybe even wearing it throughout the day, you just can't get why people like this so much. It is just not for you. And you're sitting there wondering, am I crazy? Everybody likes this fragrance. Women like it, men like it. I get compliments and it's well adored and is rated so highly. Why don't I like it? Scent is one of the most subjective senses we have, guys, and something that is popular is not going to always jive well with you. A bit of a personal example for me is Dior Sauvage. Yes, the one and only, the grail, the king, the compliment getter, the all season, the monster projector. Dior Sauvage is not my favorite fragrance, guys. It's far from it. I find the ambroxan heavy note in there just not to be something that does well for me. And it is so popular. It is worn by young guys, by old guys. It is dressed up, it is dressed down, it is all season. And it's something that I feel like I should like, but it's not something that I personally enjoy. And I hated myself for a long time for it and said, why don't I like this? I want to be complimented. I want people to enjoy the way I smell. I should like this, and I simply didn't. So I encourage you guys to know what you like and be confident in what your choices are, and don't buy into something and force yourself to like it or kid yourself and think that you're enjoying something when you personally just don't. Forget about the compliments you may lose, or forget about the compliments that you're trying to get. Wear what you and the people around you enjoy, and I promise you'll have a much better experience. And last but certainly not least, my number 5 choice for your fragrance tips to enhance your experience in this fragrance community, in this fragrance journey, is going to be don't be afraid to look into some popular cologne houses, guys. Colognes have come a long way, and you can be really surprised if you take some time and try some samples of different colognes or certain companies' takes on a particular fragrance. To help get you guys on the right track of what cologne houses to check out, some of my favorites that I really dig and do a good job with their interpretation of the fragrances are going to be Sensual Obsessions. I actually did a video reviewing Sensual Obsessions. Montaigne, I did a review of their Dior Sauvage cologne. You have Dua, you have Alexandria, you have lots and lots of good quality cologne houses that can have your fragrance for significantly less, and some even have their own slight take and edge on the fragrance that can change things from the original that you may like even better. In this day and age, in 2020, with the cologne fragrance market being what it is, cologne does not mean low quality. Cologne does not mean cheap. And I think you would be doing yourself a big disservice if you discount colognes altogether and you never even bother to look at any of them. I think, honest to God, you really should respect the craftsmanship of what the original fragrance did. And if that is something that is hardcore to you and you think clones are an abomination and you shouldn't look into them, then I can respect that. But I do think if you are at all new to the fragrance community, if you are new to the fragrance game, that you would do yourself a big disservice if you don't at least attempt to check out small decants, or maybe you have a friend that has a bottle from one of the fragrance companies that I listed, or get yourself a sample pack. Get your nose on them and you be the judge for yourself, but don't be afraid to experience new things, even if that's a clone of a fragrance that you really, really like. You could save yourself some money and find yourself a version of that same fragrance that you've been missing out on. And guys, that wraps up our list for my 5 fragrance tips that I think are going to help almost anybody in the community. I think these are 5 fragrance tips that hopefully you haven't heard before, or at least my interpretation gives you some insight and helps you along in this big journey that we're all enjoying, that is men's fragrances. If you enjoyed this list, please go ahead and drop a like on that video. It lets me know that I'm doing a good job, you guys enjoy the content that I'm putting out, and that you guys are wanting to stick around and that you like what I'm doing. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below, guys. You do not want to miss out on the content that's coming out. We're growing at an awesome pace, and I'm so thankful for the people who support me, who check out my videos, and who enjoy my content. You guys are why I do this, and it is just such a cool feeling that people are liking my stuff. So smash that subscribe button. You do not want to be left out. Go ahead and leave your thoughts down below in the comment section. Let me know what you thought of these tips. I tried to do my best to not repeat stuff that's been said a million times. These are things that in my heart I really believe would help beginners, intermediates, and even those who've owned fragrances for a long time. I think these are some solid tips, but I'm curious to see what you think. If you have any other tips for the newbies out there or for the beginners, feel free to drop those as well. I want to thank you guys for checking me out and being here today. You were watching Scents by Sean, guys. Have a great day.